Good evening, all. This is Jack Charting the Markets, and this is the Bigger Picture webinar for the evening of Sunday, the 17th of August. My disclaimer: I do this for educational purposes only. I'm here to share my technical analysis with you. I hope you can take some of what I'm doing, learn from it, transfer it to your own chance. I'm not here to issue trading signals. Right. Okay. Well, let's have a look at ES. ES, I'm not really taking the trend lines in here particularly seriously, but I just tend to draw ones that are looking good. And actually, this one is looking pretty good. We're on the verge of breaking down from this, and we've got a potential double top here. I am wondering about this because in Q, this looks an awful lot like a bull flag channel. So I'm wondering about a possible retest of the high. RTY, this looks an awful like a bull flag wedge. So again, I'm wondering about a retest of the high on Monday. And on YM, broken down slightly from a little wedge here, but these aren't the main trend lines I'm looking at. The main ones I'm following are the ones on the hourly charts that I was posting and was writing about last week. So let's have a look at DAX and the STX, both of which are pretty close to retesting the highs of the last few months. And then let's get on to those. All right, let's have a look. Okay, these are the hourly charts, and actually this Halibut did pretty well last week. I drew in 4 of these. I drew in the initial 3, and then I added 1 for IWM as the high probability trend lines I was looking at for the next resistance, and this is the one that didn't make it. And this is SPX, and so I've drawn I haven't drawn this in as a full trend line because it hasn't hit this yet. It may yet, but I would say that the other 3 all made it. Here is Q hitting the trend line perfectly and reversing, and dollar hitting the trend line perfectly and reversing, and IWM hitting the trend line perfectly and reversing. You know what? Occasionally I do get people talking to me about trend lines and isn't it all random? They didn't really do it. And actually, the truth is that if you're going to have an anchor trend line like this coming from a very obvious area like here or a low, and doing 3 touches, the fact is just to get one of those would be a pretty improbable event. Here we got 3 in 1 week. The odds of that happening if it was random would be very, 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 very small. If you draw trend lines properly, and I'm very sad to say that most people don't, but if you draw trend lines properly and you're not just using the rough ones, then you can really find some decent levels, and as you can see, that's really worked. Now, what does this mean? Well, we had original wedges here, and I was calling these, and I was saying it looked like we were going to see a retrace, and we did, and we've expanded the wedges, 3 of them anyway, if not the 4th one. What does this mean? This means we're very likely to be seeing, I mean, it could be that all these trend lines are going to break, we're going to see a move up, and actually, sometimes that does happen. And sometimes you get some really big moves. And actually, I've got a very good example here. I'll show you. On the SPX charts, I think. I was just looking at it the other day. So let's have a quick look. All right, here. This is what I wrote on 5th of July, 2021. There's a pattern option here where SPX is breaking up from a rising megaphone with the target in the 6560 area. Now, this is particularly interesting because when I wrote those words, that was July 2021, that was here. The market was about 4,600. We're now actually almost there, and we may hit it in coming months. So a clean back test of the broken trend line now in the 3880 area would confirm the setup. Now, this was the rising megaphone. These patterns perform best when you actually respect the broken trend line on the back test, which it didn't do here. So you can see I've just drawn in a little X marks the spot, although that's drifted slightly since then. We didn't do a clean back test, but we've still gone to the target, and we're almost there now. But I'm expecting to see some retracement. Am I thinking we might go higher here? Yes. I drew in a while ago this alternate trend line here, and I think we may be going through this trend line, which was a very nice one and held before, but is going now. And we may be going up to this one here. I was talking about this a while ago when I was talking about a target in the 6600 area, but obviously that's a pretty good match with this target I was looking at slightly over 4 years ago. So we can see a breakup like that, but chances are we won't. Chances are we're going to see at least a period of consolidation here, and it could be that we're going to finally see a decent retracement from this April low. Could it be more than that? Always. But at the moment, I'm not really seeing any suggestions that it might be more than that. I mean, could we see something that would look more promising? Yes. If we go and look at the daily charts, a moment. All right, if we have a look at the daily charts here, we haven't got any RSI 5 sell signals brewing here, but all we would need is a retest, and we can set those up. We could break these wedges, which I think is something that's likely to happen anyway. I have drawn this in as though the wedge is unbroken here in anticipation, but actually we didn't quite make it to the trend line. But I'm thinking we're due like 38.2 or 50% retracement here, and I'm thinking that might be soon. And, people have been talking about, there's going to be the big inflation numbers. I just saw this amazing thing where Bessent had been saying that, the hotter than expected inflation numbers meant that it was almost certain there was going to be a rate cut. In what parallel universe is that actually true? I mean, generally speaking, the hotter than expected inflation numbers mean it's less likely to be a rate cut. And I was hearing more news along that. But I mean, you do hear a lot of deranged stuff from this administration. And frankly, that's because a lot of them really have absolutely no idea what they're doing. So, but I'm not expecting to see a rate cut. The inflation numbers are coming in hotter. The economic numbers, I mean, it takes a while for these things to filter through. But to be honest, there's nothing really that's been happening this year which is particularly encouraging. They're likely to come in weaker. We're going to see a retracement here. I'm just hoping that we won't see a main high here for the year, and that we can go up further, because I have to say, for a number of reasons, I'm thinking that a high in December or early 2026 would be far better. And I'm leaning towards seeing that, but I'm wary about it happening earlier. All right, looking at ES, looks pretty much the same. SPX, we actually made it pretty much to the 3SD upper band here. Good time to again see some retracement, but it's pulling away at some speed at the moment. Looking at the Qs, Qs made the trend line again. I'd love to see a retest of this high. I was looking at these bull flags in the short term with interest. Set up some negative divergence on the RSI 5s, and we can have a very nice setup for a retracement here. We may not see that retracement, but as long as these trend lines are being respected, and we've got three very good ones being respected, and the other one has not been disrespected. Disrespected as we go up through it, and it's not a bearish overthrow. As long as these are being respected, then I'm expecting them to hold, unless we've got a bearish overthrow, which means that we're about to break down from them. Now, could these go a lot higher? Yes. We could see a decent retracement here and then come back right up to them. So we will see how that develops. Although that has a limit, because this has been a relatively short trend. It's come up a very long way. These are going up very, very fast. Unless you see a fairly sharp retracement and then a return, then it can be rather difficult to ever reach them again. But that's the evolution of patterns. These things evolve into other things, and then they form tops, and you see big retracements, and so on. And that is the evolution of market action. All right, Dia. Hit the trend line. I haven't moved the support trend line here, so I'll just do that now. But obviously we hit the resistance trend line, so the support trend line moves there. And again, this is a pretty nice looking setup for a retracement. We got a possible double top here on RTY. On the Qs and on SPX, we got potential double tops or part formed head and shoulder patterns. And if we look at IWM, we've got a pretty decent looking double top, I think. Yeah, not bad. Or part formed head and shoulders. It's pretty nice. Lovely wedges. These wedges, unless we see powerful breaks that are for real, i.e. they're breaking up rather than just overthrowing bearishly, we are looking at a period of consolidation or retracement here. And are we overdue a decent retracement? Yeah, I think so. And the news feed is starting to turn down. I did say a few months ago, back in April, that it does take a few months for the figures to come, economic figures, to work their way through the system. And actually, of course, with the BLS head having been replaced with a strong Trump loyalist, it may take even longer for them to get through the system. But nonetheless, they do get through the system. sooner or later. The inflation numbers are starting to feed through. I've got a couple of interesting graphs to post to you for charts of the day next week on the main Substack. But these are starting to come through. They're not likely to be great. They're likely to continue not to be great. And this is a good opening for a retracement. I would love to see one soon, ideally here. But we shall see. All right, looking at DAX, still leaning towards seeing a retest of the high, still not quite made it, looking pretty close though. Nikkei had already made the retest of the high. Still there at the moment, no current negative divergence. All right, let's have a look at DX. Okay, DX, bigger picture. Obviously, we've got this big bullish setup. Shorter term, we've got a head and shoulders, which is broken down here with a target in the 96.85 area. Possible falling wedge here, doesn't look too bad, but it could be. This is just going to expand and it'll continue forming as we head down into this target. Am I leaning towards this target being made? Yes, probably. Bigger picture, well, I've been talking about mixed feelings about this for a while, and the mixed feelings are because we have this very large, very nice bull flag. And it's very, very nice. And a pattern like this will generally deliver a retest of the high. Now, can it do that in a vacuum, even with horrible news for the dollar? Well, I've got to say that Trump's not been doing it. Trump's not been doing the dollar any favors. But yeah, until demonstrated otherwise, particularly when we've come down here and we tested the main rising megaphone support I've been looking for the last 2 years and reversed there. This is nice. This is a very nice bullish setup. Generally speaking, I'd give this 70% chance of playing out. And as long as we're holding key support levels, like, well, this trend line, I'm still leaning towards that. In the shorter term, I am also wondering, we've got an inverted head and shoulders which is broken up here. That's not an imminent danger of failing, but you can see we've also got a very, very nice looking rising megaphone here. And that is starting to break down slightly. No conviction breakers yet, but I think when we get one, I think we're probably going to see a retest of this low here at 96.38. My concern is that's going to take us through rising support, and if that follows through, then potentially we're looking at these overall flags breaking down. We'll see how that develops. Looking at the other currencies, in the short term, we have EUR/USD consolidating and not making much progress to the upside. Possible 60-minute sell signal, which is actually was brewing and is now trying to fix at the moment. GBP/USD, wondering about a bit of consolidation here too. USD/JPY, potential double bottom here. This would be a match with the dollar going up, which I'm not really thinking looks that likely at the moment. We will see. We're kind of in a consolidation phase where things have been moving sideways. This could be a bear flag on USD CAD, so we're really getting a lot of mixed signals here. This could be a head and shoulders forming, which should point down on Australian dollar. And on NZ, this could be a bear flag, which is breaking down. Both of those would be leaning short, but neither of those is actually a significant part. I'm not sure either of them is actually any part of the US dollar index. Looking at those on the bigger picture. Okay, EUR/USD. EUR/USD, again, we've got a very nice bear flag, and I'm giving it the benefit of the doubt until demonstrated otherwise. Exactly the same on GBP as well, and these are the inverse images of the one that we've got on the dollar. USD/JPY. Let's see another retest of this high, set up a decent looking double top. Bigger picture, I'm leaning down. USD CAD, nice looking double top. Bigger picture, this doesn't look too bullish either. And both of these are concerns in terms of the overall US dollar picture. Australian dollar, I haven't really got a bottoming pattern here, so I'd quite like to see a retest of this 0.551. NZ has been forming this strange triangle for quite a while. Leaning towards this setting up a retest of the low, but not really looking much further than that. We shall see. All right, let's have a look at bonds. Bonds have been consolidating for a while now. Really, they've been consolidating basically for this whole chart. Basically just moving sideways, not really doing much damage one way or the other. And it's still in a fragile situation. But one thing to note is that we're actually at pretty high historical interest rate levels, and at the moment it's not moving down, and there's no reason for it to move down, really, in my opinion. And actually, even if the Fed starts cutting rates, one thing I pointed out before is that the Fed doesn't actually control interest rates. The fundamental, if you think about it, if you're a bank, and you're giving out a several-year loan, obviously you're always going to charge more than you'd get just putting the money into a 10-year bond, 10-year treasury bond, because that, in inverted commas, not sure it's as true as it used to be, is safe. So you got to pay. You got to get more on a mortgage. You got to get more than you're getting on the 30-year bond, and that is what underpins U.S. lending. And if you're not getting that, well, if you're not getting that, then you're not going to lend the money. So the thing is, there's only a limited impact the Fed cutting rates has, and we saw that late last year when these are bond yields on TYX, which is the 30-year. In this period here, September to December, interest rates by the Fed were cut 0.5%. Do you see that anywhere? Because I don't. What I see is brief interruptions in a move from 3.9 to 5.2. So basically, that really didn't do much more than slightly hiccup in a move where interest rates were actually rising 1%. Into a retest of this high. The question is where they go from here. Now, there is potential to the upside. This could be an IHS forming. It hasn't broken up yet, but it could be. Equally, this could be a little double top. I'm not seeing much reason, certainly with the inflationary background, to see this happen. But the idea, I think Trump's idea with the Fed, taking control of the Fed, and then getting one of his, sycophants in office there to cut interest rates to whatever we want. His idea is he'd then be able to issue treasuries at that price, and that is a major misunderstanding of the role of the Fed here. I've called it more than once a polite fiction that the Fed sets interest rates, and they encourage that because it gives people more credibility. It gives them more momentum in the direction they're going. But what you don't want to be doing ever is standing in front of the tide coming in, saying you must go back, because that's just not going to happen. It's never ever going to happen, and a smart guy never stands there saying that. And so if anyone thinks that interest rates, if the Fed's taken over by a Trump loyalist and he puts down interest rates to 1, if anyone thinks that's actually going to affect lending prices or do anything other than actually push these yields up as confidence is lost, then they're delusional. It's simply not going to happen. So we will see how that goes. But at the moment, we're still hovering around below some pretty high levels. And if enough confidence is lost, we'll start pushing through them. We will see how that goes. Looking at the weekly chart on TNX, haven't retested the high here. 30-year has been weaker, in terms of stronger in terms of yields, but weaker in terms of the bonds than the 10-year, which is TNX. But we're still not far off the highs. Looking at TLT, could have an IHS here, and this would be pretty bullish for bonds if it plays out. It's taken a while forming. Who can say? We've got some potentially bullish patterns for bonds here. We've got obviously that little top I was talking about on TYX. If these played out, bonds could go up quite a bit, and who can say? But at the moment, I'm not seeing much reason to think that they would. All right, short term, I don't have anything in the short term. We've made all the short term signals. In terms of the patterns, it kind of looks like a bull flag on TLT. Looking at TNX, it's going sideways a lot. This is where we've basically gone since May, and really, you could draw a line through that and we'd be almost at the middle. This has been going sideways. We are waiting for direction. This could be a triangle forming. I've drawn in a couple of lines. We'll see how it goes. But at the moment, we're in a consolidation. It's waiting for direction. All right, looking at CL. I've rolled CL, HO, and RBOB into October this weekend. I haven't rolled natural gas yet. Okay, looking at CL. Potentially got a little falling wedge here, which is trying to break up. Possible bottoming action. We'll see how it goes. Looking at HO, we've still got a target down here at a retest this low here in about the 2.1785 area. And I'm still not seeing any reason to think that won't get made. I'm looking at RBOB. We've got a little double bottom here, which is in the process of failing, I think, because I think we're looking really for a retest of this low here, which I've got in about the 1.86 area. 865. And I'm not, again, seeing much of a reason to think that won't get made. Looking at NG, we've got this nice looking falling wedge here. I've drawn in another line here because we've actually broken over the trend line resistance. This wedge could be breaking up, and I have been mentioning that we've got this, we've got a seasonal period where the futures are expecting upward pressure of basically $1.4, i.e. 50% up from here. And really, we're starting that within 4 or 5 weeks. I'm wondering whether we might see a significant rally during that period. This isn't a great seasonal period to be short NG. Even though on the bigger picture, I do have some downside targets which do look pretty nice. Let's have a look at those. All right, WTech first though. Weak RSI 14 sell signal on the daily has reached the possible near miss target. I'm wondering about the retest of this low here, and if we see that, then I'm thinking that could well be the second lower double bottom, because on the bigger picture, this is a falling wedge. As you can see, we've had some nice falling wedges on here before. They delivered pretty nicely. They quite often overthrew at the bottom, and we haven't seen that here yet. But this one has broken up. If it comes back into this trend line, which I've got in the 54 area, then at that stage, we're looking at another wedge expansion. I'd put them as unbroken, but, and this is a big but, this would still be an overall bullish pattern, which would be suggesting a retest of this high here in the 126.35 area. Now, I'm not seeing any reasons for that to happen at the moment, but then I wasn't seeing much reason for it to go back up to 126 when we were down here under $10. But nonetheless, it went there. I was looking at this as a bullish pattern, and it was a bullish pattern. This is a bullish pattern too. So that's what I'm leaning towards seeing. We've got minimal downside here. I'm thinking we could go down to 54, possibly at a real stretch, maybe 50. But after that, unless we see a convincing breakdown, I'm looking higher, getting back up to 90, 100, and so on. All right, looking at a heating oil. Again, falling wedge. Again, broken up. Again, we could be expanding it. But again, the downside looks limited. On gas oil, exactly the same. Again, on all three of them. Now we've got some nice looking bottoming patterns that could take this up without going down first. My lean is Trump's keen that oil prices go down. He's been suggesting to Saudi that they up their production. They've been cooperative. I think this could take oil down to $50, and being European and with the Russians next door, I'd love to see that happen because it would mean the Russians would run out of money considerably faster. As we're all worried that in a few years they might be invading us, that would be great. So we shall see. All right, looking at natural gas. Natural gas, really, I've got some nice targets below. I've got this trend line here, which I've got in about the 2.4 area, and I've also got this trend line here, which has pretty much or almost been made. So I am wondering whether we might be making a low here. We haven't quite made it to the trend line, but this is another falling wedge that I've been watching, and I'm thinking we could be making a low here. I'd love to see it go a bit lower. But sooner or later, there's going to be pressure to go higher. This is the trend line I've got in the 2.4 area. I'd love to see that seen. And overall, this could well be a big bear flag. So, but I think the chances of us making, if we are going to make this target down here in the 1.69 area for a retest, I'd be leaning towards seeing that happen after Christmas, early next year. I'm not sure we've got time to reach that unless there's some kind of a crisis before then. All right, let's have a look at the metals charts. Now, GC, we've been consolidating here, possible double bottom here. I'd love to see a move up, and I'd love to see it retest the all-time high. But I got to be honest, I'm not seeing a big setup for it here. SI, we've been consolidating sideways, possible triangle forming. That would lean bullish. I'd love to again see a retest of this high here. We may get that. Promising, looks more promising for that. We've got a weak 6-minute buy signal fixed, but that wouldn't get us any more than the marginal fraction of that distance. Palladium, I'm wondering about a breakup from here. We had at the weekend a possible weak 6-minute buy signal brewing, and you can see that is fixed on the move up. I'm wondering whether we might see a move up here, and of course on the palladium head and shoulders, we've now made the full target. So looking for a reversal pattern here, wondering about a bounce. On platinum, No current divergence here. Got to say, this looks like a big bear flag. Hasn't broken down yet, but the obvious obvious thing for this to do would be to break down and make a retest to the low. So a bit of a mixed picture there. Let's have a look at the bigger. Oh, well, let's have a look at HG first. HG, we've got, obviously, this was tariff talk, tariffs being implemented, and a very, very, very tight bear flag channel since then. I'm expecting this to result in a retest to the low here. Because this is so tight, that's not actually going to be a great deal lower than it is at the moment, but that would be in about the 4.325 area. All right, let's have a look at those on the bigger picture charts, and let's have a look at gold first. All right, let's have a look at gold. Now, gold, potential level bottom here. Not really an awful lot saying this is going to rally, but I would love to see a move up, this double bottom play out, and a retest of the all-time high. And now the little snafu over whether tariffs are going to be imposed on gold has been cleared up. This is now actually straightened out the price, and sooner rather than later, I would hope, we are going to see that high retest because I believe we are owed it. Looking at SI, I would love to see a retest of this high here too, just consolidating sideways at the moment. This looks as though it leans bullish and is holding the monthly pivot as support at the moment. We've got a weak 60-minute buy signal fixed, but that isn't something that's going to get us terribly far. On palladium, we've when I was looking at this on Saturday, we had a possible weak 60-minute buy signal brewing, and we've got that fixed now. We've got a potential, kind of looks like a falling wedge, but most importantly, we've got the head and shoulders, which broke down and has now made the full target. I'm thinking we could see a bit of a counter trend rally here, waiting to see. Platinum, this really does look like a bear flag. It looks a lot like a bear flag. And if it is a bear flag, then hang on. Sorry, it's about to look even more like a bull flag. My trend line had wandered slightly there, but have a look at the trend line here. That really looks like a flag. So I'm leaning towards this flag breaking down, which is what I would normally do, and delivering a retest of this low here in about the 1270 area. All right, looking at HG, this is obviously tariff move, tariffs announced, tariffs being implemented. This was buying before the tariffs came in. But anyway, since then, this has barely moved and has formed this very, very tight bear flag channel. This is a bear flag channel. I'm expecting this to result in a retest of this low, and I've got that in about 4.325 area. All right, let's have a look at those on the big picture charts. And looking at gold, very old daily sell signal here, which I'm not taking particularly seriously. This is a sideways consolidation. Sooner or later, it's going to break up. But if this sideways consolidation were to become a bull flag, sideways consolidation, then of course we could go down potentially down to 3,350 area before it breaks up. Personally, I'd prefer we didn't do that, and I'm looking for support at the weekly middle band at 3,300. Well, I really don't want to see the monthly middle band at 2,700, but the weekly middle band would normally hold, and you can see it's been holding. So I'm watching for that. We've held it here, we've held it here. As long as that continues to hold, we should hold 300, and the next big target is 3,500. All right, looking at silver. Silver, you can see we hit the big resistance trend lines, went slightly over them, but the trend lines are being respected. I am leaning towards, I would love to see a retest of this high. Bigger picture, I'm thinking that would be the second high of a double top, and we would probably go down from there. Ideally, after we've made the retest of the all-time high on gold. Right, palladium. This kind of looks like a bear flag, and I had a very close look at this on the weekly chart, and it really, really looks like a bear flag. This looks like a bear flag megaphone. I am wondering about a counter-trend rally here. We've got a possible daily RSI 5 buy signal brewing in the context of an overall RSI 14 sell signal fix. The way this would work is this would fix, head up in a counter-trend rally, make target, and then continue down to the main target on the RSI 14 signal. Does this look credible? Yes. Come up here, maybe back test the daily middle band, or go a bit higher, 1,200, 1,300, and then come down and make this target, which would be in the 850 area. Not necessarily saying that's going to get made, but that's kind of the lean of the chart. Platinum. We made the big resistance trend line here and overthrew it slightly. Got to say, bigger picture, this looks like a bear flag. We got just over the 50%. If we were to set up an ideal level bottom, what I would normally say is you go up to 50% retracement, come back and retest the low, and then you return to play out the double bottom. And this may well be doing that. But if so, the next move would be to see a retest of the low here at 558. On the daily chart, we've got an RSI 14 sell signal fixed, nothing on the RSI 5, but you can see we've been, with this rally so far, is ending at the daily middle band, and that may be as high as it goes. All right, looking at copper. Copper, I'm mainly focused in the short term on this trend line here. I am aware of this bigger trend line here down in the 2.4 area and thinking we might make it, but mainly I'm thinking we should make this rising support trend line here in the 3.9 area. Look at the daily chart, no current divergence, RSI 14 sell signal made target suddenly, and mainly I'm looking for this trend line here, which is not the same trend line. Is it coming from the same area? Yeah, 2022. Why is that different? I don't know, but I'm more inclined to trust the weekly figure. I've got that in about the 4.07 area. We will see how that goes, but for some reason that shouldn't be different, and it is. I'll have a look. I'll have more of a look at it. Okay, GDX. We've got possible weak RSI 14 sell signal brewing here. Obviously, this has come up to a decent height. At the moment, gold is holding this up. We do have RSI 14 hourly sell signals fixed, but neither of those is played out on GDX or GDXJ yet. Do we have potential for more downside? Yes, but we don't really have much in the way of bigger picture sell signals to indicate that's likely to happen. All right, let's have a look at the other commodities. KC. I've drawn this in. I've moved over because initially these were showing the default chart being the September charts, but actually for 4 of them, I've moved them into December over the last couple of weeks because that's actually where the volume is. All right, here, when I moved it into December, this clarified what was happening a lot. This is an IHS. It is broken up with a target in the 370 area and making decent progress towards that. So we will see how that goes. We had a sell signal that failed, but this is a breakup. Could this have been a bear flag? Yes, but right now it's an IHS. And it's not a bear flag anymore. We've moved beyond that. Sugar, we're seeing some retracements here. I've got more to say about this on the daily chart, I think. On the CC, possible bear flag forming. I am wondering on the bigger picture. We do have an IHS ratio which is broken up with a target in the 89.50 area, and I'm leaning towards that making the target. CT, we've got a nice looking double bottom here, and actually I'm fairly bullish on CT, so I'm seeing this as a bull flag forming, and I'm thinking we head up into the target area here, which is in the 69.6 to no, that would be the 69.15 to 69.6 area. All right, looking at lumber, this very, very tight channel here, which could never last long because they can't sustain for that long, being this tight. So I'm thinking we're overdue a counter trend rally. Bigger picture, I'm still leaning short. CW, possible bottoming action here, not a bad looking little level bottom, and I think we might have some positive divergence on the daily chart. We'll see, but it's not a perfect falling wedge here, but it is a possible falling wedge. Corn, nice counter trend rally here, might be reversing, possible part formed inverted head and shoulders maybe. Soy, we've already seen a breakup. We broke over the wedge here. We had an IHS. We made it to the target. Looks like it's going to be retesting the high next. That could be the second low of a double top. Sorry, second high of a double top, but we could break up from there. On ZL, we had a double top here that made target. We got a double bottom here. Hasn't broken up yet, but if it does, that would have a target in about the 55.75 area. On live cattle, looks like a little bullish triangle forming here. Lean hogs, we've got a pretty decent looking flag set up here, and it's broken down. It might still be forming, of course, but if it's broken down, it means it. Then we'd be looking at a retest of this low here, which would be in about the 85.9 area. All right, great. Let's have a look at the bigger picture charts. And Looking at coffee. Coffee, no current divergence on the daily chart, nothing on the monthly chart as well. We have seen a breakup, weekly chart. We've seen a breakup to the weekly middle band. If it can get over that, then that IHS target is very doable. I would love to, in my wildest dreams, we might see a retest of this high here to set up the second high of a double top, which would be a wonderful short. It's a little too early to be talking about that, but certainly I'd love to see it. In terms of an IHS here, yeah, it is an IHS. It looked like a bear flag, but it wasn't. This is the trend line here. I haven't drawn it in, but I'm liking, and this actually is a fit with the overall setup here being a bull flag, which of course could set up a retest to the high here at 4.41. Looking at sugar, we still got the apocalypse scenario below, and I'll be mentioning that every week because that's a 6.5 to 9, and if we see a hard breakdown on sugar, that would be the obvious target. Looking at the shorter picture, this could be a falling wedge. We could be bottoming out here, and this head and shoulders, which is broken down, could be failing. To fail, it would actually need to get all the way back up here, 2371. But in the short term, for my IHS maybe here or here, here really, and move up from there. Mainly it needs to break over the wedge resistance, which I've got in the 19.25 area. Looking at the daily chart, no current divergence apart from the weak RSI 14 buy signal, which hasn't quite made target. This kind of looks like a bear flag at the moment, and I'm thinking this might be a bear flag. So we will see. I think I drew a trend line on here, so I'm just going to do that again in case I missed it at the weekend. But if we did see a bear flag forming here, it would kind of look like this. And that's pretty nice. That is nice. I'm thinking this may well be a bear flag, setting up a retest to the low, but that could be the second low of a double bottom when we get there. Looking at cocoa, obviously by historical standards, this is looking pretty richly valued, and I'm leaning towards the downside. In the short term, though, we saw a bit of upside action here. We've got an IHS which hasn't failed yet, which has broken up with the target in about the 10300 area. We will see whether it can make it. Otherwise, if it doesn't and we get down below the right shoulder low at 79.10, this is likely going to retest the low here at 72.08. Looking at wheat, does this look like a bear flag? Yeah, it really does. So I'm still leaning towards seeing some lower here. What I would say is we might see a rally here. We've got a possible RSI 5 buy signal brewing. We are seeing some promising stuff on the hourly chart. Looking at corn, we made the main target here, which was a retest this low here. This could be the second low of a double bottom. Got a possible RSI 5 buy signal brewing. This has been hanging on for grim death as this has gone a bit lower, but it's survived so far. I would like to see this develop into a buy signal and deliver a rally. That was on the weekly chart. On the daily chart, we've got an RSI 5 buy signal fixed. We've got a large RSI 14 buy signal brewing. Looks as though we're starting a rally here. Waiting for it to see if we can get over the daily middle band, which I've got at 388.31. Looking at soybeans, we'd broken over this already. We'd broken down from what looks like a flag here. So I'm wondering about this. I think I've drawn this in. I've drawn in a possible flag channel support trend line, but I'm pretty sure it didn't work. So, hang on. Just check that. Nope, not even close. So, still leaning towards this seeing a retest this low here at 93606, but short term, it doesn't seem to be interested, and it's trying to get back over the daily middle band. I'm thinking it might manage. On the hourly chart, no current divergence. Nice rally up here, and really looking at the hourly chart, doesn't look as though it's quite finished yet. Cotton, I'm thinking this might well be the start of a big run up on cotton. This is the first tiny break over the wedge resistance here. It's very, very small. It needs to follow through to the upside, but if it does, then we've already got a double bottom here. Sustained break up over about the 73.25 area. We'd look for a target up here in the 87.5 to 90 area. I would really like to see that happen. It's very, very overdue. So waiting to see if that delivers. We do have a weak RSI 14 buy signal fix. Looking at lumber, this looks like a bear flag. Within the bear flag, we've got a double bottom. That hasn't broken down yet, but it's thinking about it. and we're testing the weekly middle band. Closed pretty much on it at the end of the week. I would like to see this break down and deliver a retest this low here at 35250. And if we see that, then I think that might be the second low of a double bottom when we get there. All right, great. In that case, let's have a quick last look at crypto. Okay. Bitcoin retested the high, rejected there so far. We got a possible double top here. Obviously this tends to be married to equities, so I'm thinking, of course, that we may well be going into a consolidation or a retracement on equities. I'm wondering the same here. If we were to see a sustained break back below this support, I've got that at, sorry, I haven't got the tags in, but I've got that at about 112. That could get us down into about the 100 area, which is a pretty good support level. Just above this possible neckline here, which is in about the 99 area. Looking at the hourly chart, nothing really to say, but of course we've got this trend line support, which I'm watching in about the 116 area. Break below that, and then I think we might be off to the races. Okay, looking at Solana, we've seen a nice move up into 209. Obviously, that could be the second high of a double top. I don't think it is. But so far, I would really like to see this go considerably higher for this to stop looking like as much of a bear flag as it actually does. We do have an IHS which is broken up in the 283 area. I still really like that. But Ethereum, of course, this was the IHS, left shoulder, head, right shoulder. We broke up and we already made that target. I'm expecting this to go a little higher, retest the high, and potentially go up from there. But really, in terms of Ethereum, I'm slightly I'm surprised that this has actually come so far while Solana has not managed to keep up. I talked to Matt. Matt says that this is likely to be just rotation, really, and that Solana likely will get a good leg up next time. It hasn't really lost any of its competitive edge. I'm inclined to take the expert opinion on that, but I am a little concerned about the underperformance that we have seen lately. We shall see. All right, great. In that case, that's a wrap. I'll catch you guys again on Wednesday, and everyone take care.